picture this. You're standing right in the heart of modern-day Kingston, Jamaica, like right at the bustling intersection of Hope and Trafalgar Roads.
Oh, yeah, that is a busy spot.
It really is. All around you, there's this relentless rhythm of the city. You've got concrete, asphalt, the shimmering heat radiating off the pavement, and just this constant surge of traffic pushing past.
Right, just pure chaos.
Exactly. But then you turn your head, and suddenly you are looking at an absolute oasis. It's this pristine 11-acre estate with lush, sprawling lawns.
It's almost jarring, honestly.
It is. And sitting right in the middle of it is Devon House. It's the stunning masterpiece of classic Jamaican Georgian architecture. It has these grand wraparound porches, neoclassical symmetry, and elegant jalousie windows.
Ah, those louvered, slanted glass panes.
Yeah, the ones that let the tropical breeze in but keep the heavy rain out. It almost feels like a mirage, you know? This perfectly preserved pocket of the 19th century just sitting there quietly in the middle of a modern metropolis.
It really is a striking visual contrast. But, while the architecture itself is breathtaking, the real treasure of Devon House isn't the handcrafted mahogany furniture or those intricate Wedgwood ceilings.
No, not at all.
The true significance lies in the story of the man who built it.
Which brings us to the mission for our deep dive today. We are digging into the source material to uncover the cinematic, just completely turbulent life of that man, George Stiebel.
Jamaica's first Black millionaire.
Right, though honestly, wrapping his life up in the word millionaire feels incredibly inadequate. Like, we are looking at a story that involves enslaved parentage, gun running, wrongful imprisonment, shipwrecks, and a massive South American gold rush.
It's a genuinely unparalleled 19th century epic. I mean, when we look at the historical records, we're tracking a man who navigated extreme societal prejudice and relentless physical danger to forge his own empire.
Yeah.
His life is it's a masterclass in resilience and calculated risk.
Okay, let's unpack this right from his origins. Because you really can't understand his drive without understanding the extreme contrasts he was born into. So George was born in Jamaica in 1821, and his parentage represents a collision of two entirely different worlds. Who exactly were his parents?
Well, his father, Sigismund Stiebel, was a German Jewish merchant. Sigismund's family had migrated to Jamaica from Frankfurt via England.
Okay, so they were European immigrants.
Exactly. And this was largely because the British government was actively encouraging Jewish settlement in the colony by offering full citizenship and rights. So the Stiebels, along with their relatives, the Schloss brothers, established these major, highly lucrative trade links across Kingston, Bogota, Frankfurt, and London.
Wow.
Yeah, they were very securely entrenched in the merchant elite.
Right. But George's mother was completely outside of that privileged sphere. I mean, the sources don't even give us her name.
No, they don't.
It just says she was a black woman of African descent who worked as Sigismund's housekeeper.
Correct. And based on historical compensation claims tied to the 1833 Slavery Abolition Act, it's highly likely she was enslaved.
That's a lot to process.
It is. The parliamentary returns show that Sigismund and his wife Eliza claimed ownership of several enslaved individuals. And given that George was born in 1821, which was well before abolition, the power dynamics at play surrounding his birth were profoundly unequal.
Yet reading through the research, what happens next seems to break from the typical tragic patterns of that era. Like, Sigismund doesn't just ignore his son, does he?
He doesn't, no. Following Jewish tradition, which emphasizes paternal responsibility, Sigismund actually moves young George out of his mother's quarters and into the main house.
Really?
Yeah, he decides to raise him directly, under his own care.
Wow, it's like being handed a VIP pass to the inner circle by your father, but the societal bouncers at the door still absolutely refuse to let you in.
That is a great way to put it.
Because while his father accepted him, Jamaican society made it very clear that he was an outsider.
Absolutely. You have to consider the intense intersection of prejudices he was facing. He was sent to schools attended by the children of the plantocracy.
The wealthy elite, right.
Right, the white, privileged elite of colonial Jamaica. He was of mixed race in a deeply racialized society built on slavery, and he was of Jewish descent in a predominantly Christian ruling class.
That's a target on his back from every angle.
Exactly. The bullying he endured was relentless and just brutal.
I can only imagine what that does to a kid's psyche. Our sources note that it got so bad, George simply couldn't take it anymore. At just 14 years old, he drops out of school and runs away.
Yeah.
He just completely leaves that world behind.
Kellen, what's fascinating here is how these early, deeply painful experiences of rejection likely served as the ultimate catalyst for his life. The bullying didn't crush him, It isolated him.
It forced him to rely on himself.
Precisely. He quickly learned he couldn't rely on the traditional pathways of societal acceptance. He couldn't just network his way up through polite society. He had to become entirely self-reliant. That rejection fueled this natural, fierce entrepreneurial spirit.
So he runs away and ends up working in a carpenter's yard. I'm curious, how does his father react to this? Does he try to drag him back to the plantocracy school?
No, and this is really to Sigismund's credit. He eventually finds George, but rather than forcing him back into a hostile academic environment, he pivots.
Oh, that's surprisingly progressive.
It really is. He sees his son's mechanical aptitude and apprentices him to a shipbuilder. Later on, he brings George into the family merchant business. George even works on reconstructing the famous Ferry Inn landmark in Jamaica.
But George wasn't going to just stay on land and play the part of the dutiful merchant's son, was he? I mean, he eventually takes some seed money from his father, buys a ship, and turns to the sea. Why the ocean?
Because the ocean offered a frontier where your lineage, your race, and your societal approval mattered far less than your navigational skill, your daring, and your willingness to take massive risks.
Right, the ocean doesn't care who your parents are.
Exactly. The sea was the ultimate 19th century meritocracy. So in his early 20s, he starts transporting cargo between North and South America, and he's incredibly adept at it. He eventually expands that one ship into a fleet of 3.
But that appetite for risk is where the story takes a sharp turn into dangerous territory. By 1844, slavery had been abolished in Jamaica, but it was still very much active just across the water in Cuba.
Yes.
Our sources show George doing something highly illegal. What exactly was his cargo?
Well, he decided to start smuggling guns to restive enslaved populations in Cuba.
Which is mind-blowing. He's a young, mixed-race merchant sailing into a foreign colony to arm a rebellion. He does eventually get caught, right?
He does, yeah. The Spanish authorities throw him into a Cuban prison on a gun-running conviction. But he doesn't stay there long. He manages to strike up a friendship with one of his prison guards, discovering they are both Freemasons.
Wait, really? Like the secret society?
Yep, part of that massive, centuries-old fraternal organization known for its secret handshakes and mutual aid. The guard honors their Masonic bond and actually helps George escape.
I want you, the listener, to just imagine the sheer charisma and nerve it takes to talk a colonial prison guard into risking his own life to break you out, all based on a shared fraternal membership.
It's wild.
But incredibly, that wasn't his only brush with the inside of a colonial prison cell. I read the notes on the 1861 Santo Domingo incident, and it reads like a bizarre, historical, dark comedy. Can you walk us through what happened?
Gladly, because it perfectly illustrates the geopolitical chaos of the Caribbean at the time. So George was chartering a Dutch schooner called the Delia. He stops in Haiti to pick up a shipment of coffee.
Okay.
And while he's docked, a troupe of equestrian artists. Essentially, yeah, a traveling circus act with horses. They ask if he can give them a ride to Santo Domingo. George agrees to drop them off at the port of Azua.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that sounds completely harmless. A merchant ship, some coffee, and a few circus horses.
Right. But when they arrive at Azua, they look up and see the Spanish flag flying instead of the Dominican flag.
Uh-oh.
George and his captain go ashore to clear customs and request permission to unload the passengers and horses. They are immediately brought before the local commander, General Sosa, who confiscates their papers and declares George a prisoner simply because his ship sailed in from Haiti.
Wait, just for coming from Haiti? That makes absolutely no sense. Was there an embargo?
There was no law preventing trade. To understand the sheer absurdity of the arrest, you have to look at the political context. Spain had just annexed the Dominican Republic in 1861.
Okay, so tensions are high.
Exactly. General Sosa is stationed in Azua, a province known to fiercely oppose the annexation. Sosa is isolated. He has no Spanish reinforcements yet. He's surrounded by locals who hate him, and he's absolutely terrified of a Haitian invasion or a Haitian-backed rebellion.
Ah, I see. So, to a highly paranoid military commander, a foreign merchant ship showing up from Haiti to drop off quote-unquote equestrian artists looks like a covert scouting mission or a distraction.
Precisely. Sosa's paranoia completely overrode any legal reality. He viewed George as a threat, or at least as leverage. George is forced to march overland day and night through blazing sun and torrential rain all the way to the capital of Santo Domingo.
That's brutal.
It was. And then he's thrown into a common prison for 24 hours.
How does he get out this time? I assume there wasn't another Freemason guard handy.
No, unfortunately not. This time, it required international diplomatic pressure. The British consul, Martin T. Hood, have to intervene. Hood gets George released and is so outraged by the arbitrary, illegal nature of the arrest that he writes a detailed letter of protest all the way to Lord John Russell.
Wow, the British Foreign Secretary.
Yes, who had also been prime minister, so this went all the way to the top.
It just shows the level of volatility he was operating in. He's dodging Spanish authorities, navigating treacherous geopolitics, and building this notorious reputation. And that reputation had real personal costs.
It certainly did.
The sources mention he fell in love with a Jamaican woman named Magdalene Baker, the daughter of a Moravian missionary. Her parents were completely appalled by him, the gun running, the arrests, the danger.
They absolutely disapproved. Out of respect for them, or perhaps recognizing that he couldn't win them over, George and Magdalene actually waited until both of her parents passed away before they finally married in 1851.
Imagine putting your life on hold like that. But he finally gets the family, he has the ships, he's building a solid life, he had outrun the colonial authorities, but then he runs headfirst into a force he can't negotiate with. Nature.
Yeah.
What happens off the coast of Venezuela?
A catastrophic storm hits. All three of George's ships, his entire fleet, his entire livelihood, sink to the bottom of the ocean. He is physically on one of the schooners when it goes down.
That is devastating. He loses everything in a single afternoon.
Almost everything. He survives only by taking a money belt, stuffing it with whatever valuables and gold coins he could quickly gather, tying it around his waist, and physically swimming through the storm to the Venezuelan shore.
Put yourself in his shoes for a moment. You wash up on a foreign beach, soaking wet. Your business is literally sitting at the bottom of the sea, and you have a wife and young kids back in Jamaica relying on you.
It's a nightmare scenario.
Most people would use whatever was in that money belt to buy a ticket home, but he doesn't do that.
No. He decides he cannot return to Jamaica empty-handed to face the society that had always doubted him. He stays in Venezuela.
Wow.
He uses the contents of that money belt to buy goods, and he becomes a peddler. He starts walking the rugged trade routes with mule trains, selling basic wares just to survive and rebuild his capital.
It's an incredible display of grit. But here is where the story feels like it jumps off the rails a bit. He goes from being a guy walking a mule train in the jungle to the chairman of a global gold mining operation.
Yeah, quite the leap.
How on earth does that transition happen?
Well, it hinges on a chance meeting and deep strategic networking. While peddling, he meets a Corsican trader named Antonio Liccioni. Now, for decades, there had been rumors of vast gold deposits near the Urari River. A Brazilian prospector had shown up with gold samples back in 1842, and a Frenchman corroborated the stories in 1849.
So the rumors were well established.
Right. Liccioni knew the area intimately from his own trade routes and was convinced that an old abandoned Spanish mine there had massive untapped potential.
So in 1870, they team up. George, Antonio, and a few others form a partnership called Compañía El Callao to reopen this old Spanish mine. And George isn't just a minor investor. He is named the chairman of the board of directors.
Yep.
Okay, let's unpack this. How does a shipwrecked peddler manage to secure the chairmanship of a gold mine? And how do they fund it? The outline mentions he secured venture capital by selling shares in Paris.
This is where we see George's genius. It wasn't just luck that he washed up in a gold-rich country. Remember his background. He wasn't just a random peddler. He was raised by Sigismund Stiebel.
Oh, right. The merchant elite.
Exactly. He understood international merchant banking. He remembered the European trade networks his father and the Schloss brothers had established in Frankfurt and London.
Ah, so he leveraged those familial connections and his own mercantile education to speak the language of international finance.
You got it. When the mine needed heavy equipment and a proper crushing mill, George utilized his business acumen as chairman to help draft a compelling business case, taking it to European investors. He managed to sell shares in Paris to secure the necessary venture capital.
That is brilliant.
He bridged the gap between the raw, rugged frontier of the Venezuelan jungle and the sophisticated financial capitals of Europe. That is high-level strategic management.
And the return on that management is staggering. Once they get that mill set up, the mine absolutely explodes in productivity. By 1886, El Callao isn't just a successful operation, it is the leading producer of gold in the entire world. They were yielding 5.6 tons of gold at their peak.
The financial dividends they paid out are almost difficult to comprehend today. They paid dividends consistently for 11 years, sometimes on a monthly basis.
A monthly basis.
Yeah. By 1875, the dividend doubled the original investment. In 1876, it quintupled. And by 1886, the mine was paying out 34 times the original capital.
34 times. That is wow. And here's where it gets really interesting. Armed with this unfathomable, world-altering wealth, George decides it is time to go home. He returns to Jamaica in 1873. He comes back to the very island, the very high society that bullied him out of school, but he returns as an absolute financial titan.
He effectively purchases the status that was denied to him as a child. He moves his family to London for a while, buys a house on the prestigious Wimpole Street, sends his daughter Teresa to finishing school in France, and starts aggressively buying up massive Jamaican estates, sugar plantations, coffee plantations, 2 wharves at Church Street.
And in 1879, he buys Devon Pen, 53 acres from the Church of England. In 1881, right as the gold mine is seeing its exponential growth, he hires a prominent architect, Charles P. Lazarus, to build his dream house on the foundation of an old church rectory. This is how we get Devon House.
And the house itself is a marvel of adaptation. It has all the trappings of European wealth, a grand ballroom, an elegant single staircase, imported European antiques, handcrafted mahogany. But it also incorporates brilliant tropical design. We mentioned those wraparound porches and jalousie windows earlier, which protected the interior from the sun while catching the cross breeze.
I read that the kitchen was also completely separated from the main house.
Yes, the kitchen was built as a detached structure at the back of the property. This was a vital safety measure in the 19th century to mitigate the risk of a catastrophic fire, but it also kept the intense heat of the cooking ovens away from the main living quarters.
Smart. So George, his wife Magdalene, his daughter Teresa, and her husband Richard, who actually becomes the mayor of Kingston, they all live there like Jamaican royalty. They had a massive staff, stables, a blacksmith shop, and George even built his own private racetrack on the property.
A completely self-sufficient kingdom.
Yeah, it sounds like the ultimate triumph. But, so what does this all mean? Because despite all this wealth, the story takes a deeply sobering turn.
It does. It proves that no amount of money can insulate a person from mortality. The sorrow actually began right as he returned from Venezuela. He learned his son Sigismund had died while he was away building his fortune.
Oh, it's terrible.
And then in 1892, his beloved wife Magdalene passes away.
The hits just keep coming. Teresa, his daughter, goes back to England to grieve, leaving her young son Douglas with George at Devon House. But in 1895, young Douglas contracts typhoid and dies.
It's awful.
And then, incredibly, just 1 week later, Teresa's husband Richard dies after a swim in the family pool. Officially, it was ruled influenza, though some suspected a massive heart attack.
It's almost unbearable. Teresa loses her son and her husband in the span of 7 days, while she is an ocean away. And George, now in his 70s, is utterly heartbroken. He has built this 53-acre, multi-generational palace designed to be filled with laughter and family, and suddenly they are all gone. He dies the following year in 1896.
And in a strange, poetic twist of fate, his death coincides almost perfectly with the depletion of the gold vein at El Callao.
Yeah, the gold runs out right as the man who mined it passes away. It is a profound, tragic irony.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, though, what exactly is the legacy he left behind? Because his personal family line suffered so much tragedy, but his public footprint seems massive.
His public legacy absolutely endured and helped shape the nation. He served as the custos of St. Andrew, which meant he was essentially the chief magistrate and representative of the crown for that entire parish.
A huge political position.
Exactly. He was instrumental in funding the Great Exhibition of 1891, which was a massive undertaking to promote Jamaican exports and tourism to the world. He was even honored by Queen Victoria as a companion of the most distinguished order, which was a massive honor, essentially recognizing his achievements in colonial service.
He left an undeniable mark. But amazingly, the physical monument to his life, Devon House, almost suffered a tragic fate too. Fast forward to 1960s, and developers were eyeing the property. They wanted to demolish this beautiful estate to build concrete condominiums.
Which wasn't unprecedented at all. That intersection of Hope and Trafalgar Roads used to be called Millionaire's Corner. But all the other great mansions there, like Abbey Court, had already been bulldozed and replaced by apartments. Devon House was dangerously close to being permanently erased.
Fortunately, Edward Saga, who was then the Minister of Development and Welfare, heard about the demolition plan. He immediately stepped in and issued a preservation notice under the National Trust Act, halting the destruction in its tracks. The government eventually purchased it, and in 1982, it was completely refurbished.
Which is why, today, they've retained 11 of the original 53 acres. But instead of remaining a private, exclusive walled garden for the ultra-wealthy, the space has been completely repurposed for the public.
I love that part.
The former carriage house is now a restaurant. That old separate kitchen we talked about is now a famous bakery. It has become a bustling, vibrant hub for culinary arts, crafts, and culture, open to everyone.
It really brings the story full circle. You have a man who starts out as an outcast, a bullied runaway child of an enslaved mother who goes on to survive prisons and shipwrecks, becomes a peddler, transforms into the chairman of a global gold empire, and finally leaves behind an architectural masterpiece that now serves as the cultural heart of his nation.
The arc of his life is an incredible testament to human endurance.
It really is. Which leaves you with something to think about. If George Stiebel could somehow walk the lush grounds of Devon House today and see that his deeply personal, tragically emptied estate is now filled with people from all walks of life, people of all races and backgrounds laughing, eating, and freely enjoying the space, how would he measure the ultimate return on his life's investment? Was the true gold he brought to the surface not the ore in Venezuela, but the lasting cultural heritage he left behind for his country? The next time you find yourself standing at a busy intersection, surrounded by the rush of the modern world, remember that sometimes the most enduring empires are the quiet, beautiful oases left behind.